The alien king thought his daughter was lost in battle, until she came back with a human HFY Stories. The planet Zyphora glimmered under its twin suns, casting long shadows across the jagged mountains and vast battlefields where warriors trained day and night. Its people were strong, disciplined, and proud. They believed in honor above all else, and the most respected among them was the king's daughter, Princess Lyra. She was not just royalty, she was a warrior, a strategist, and the symbol of hope for the entire planet. Everywhere she went, soldiers looked to her for guidance, respect, and courage. The war had come suddenly. Zyphora's neighboring systems, long jealous of its wealth and strength, launched a massive invasion. Entire fleets darkened the skies and the ground trembled under the weight of mechanized armies. In the palace, King Talyrix watched the news feeds with clenched fists, his face rigid with anger and concern. "Send the best," he ordered. "I want the border held and I want victory. Do not fail." Her armor gleamed in the reflection of the control panels. She did not fear battle, it had been her life since childhood. "I will go, father," she said firmly. "I will hold the line." Talyrix looked at her, pride and fear warring in his expression. "Be careful, Lyra, I cannot lose you," he said. She only nodded, understanding the weight of both duty and family expectation. Lyra gathered her squad, elite soldiers who had trained under her since they were young. They were humans in potential, aliens of different species, all brought together by trust and loyalty. The mission was dangerous: infiltrate the enemy lines, disrupt their supply chains, and hold the Western Front until reinforcements arrived. The battle began at dawn. The sky erupted with flashes of energy as ships clashed above the mountains. The ground shook as massive war machines rolled forward, firing weapons that tore up the terrain. Lyra moved with precision, her squad following without question. Every step was calculated, every order executed perfectly. The enemy was ruthless. They had studied Zyphora's tactics and adapted quickly, forcing Lyra to improvise. She led small strikes to weaken their defenses and protect civilians caught in the crossfire. The squad fought fiercely, but as the day wore on, the situation worsened. Communications started to fail. The terrain grew dangerous, with deep craters and sudden ambushes. Then came the ambush. From the shadows of a ruined city, enemy forces emerged, cutting off Lyra's path. Her squad fought valiantly, but the numbers were against them. One by one, her warriors fell. Lyra herself faced multiple attackers, dodging energy blasts and striking with deadly precision. She knew she could not hold out forever. A massive explosion rocked the city, sending Lyra flying. She hit the ground hard, pain ripping through her body. She tried to rise, but darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. Around her, the battlefield was chaos. Smoke, fire, and screams filled the air. She realized with a cold shock that her squad had been wiped out. Meanwhile, back on Zyphora, the palace received the news. "Princess Lyra has not returned," the commander reported, voice trembling. King Talyrix's heart sank. "Search the battlefield. Bring her back at any cost," he ordered, but deep down he feared the worst. The next hours were a blur. Zyphora's forces continued to fight, but without Lyra, morale dropped. The soldiers remembered her courage and leadership, and their hearts sank knowing she might be gone. Across the planet, people lit candles and prayed for the princess who had always stood for hope and strength. But Lyra was not dead. She woke to a strange, cold place, surrounded by walls of metal and glowing panels. She was alone, injured, but alive. The enemy had captured her and taken her to their research facility. Alien scientists observed her from behind reinforced glass, taking notes and studying her movements. They were fascinated by Zyphora's warriors, especially the princess. Lyra struggled to move. Her body ached, her head throbbed, but her mind was sharp. She assessed her surroundings carefully, noting exits, patrol schedules, and security weaknesses. She was determined to escape, but the enemy had not made it easy. She was not alone. Across the room, she noticed another prisoner, a human soldier looking wary but strong. His name was Ethan Cole. Lyra had never seen a human up close before, but she immediately recognized something different in him. He was not like Zyphora's disciplined warriors. He seemed more flexible, more unpredictable, and yet there was courage in his eyes. At first, Lyra was skeptical. Humans were known in Zyphora for being fragile, weak, and slow to adapt to interstellar combat, but Ethan's presence challenged that belief. Days passed. Lyra and Ethan learned to communicate despite their differences. Lyra discovered that humans had a strength Zyphora had overlooked: creativity in battle, empathy for allies, and an ability to think outside rigid systems. Ethan, in turn, learned from Lyra, studying her techniques and her precise strategies. Slowly, a mutual respect grew between them, born from survival and necessity. Lyra also discovered something important about herself. She had always believed that strength alone defined leadership. Now she saw that courage, intelligence, and the willingness to trust others could be just as powerful. She began to consider the future of her planet, wondering if Zyphora's obsession with pure strength was a limitation. Escape became the focus. Lyra and Ethan observed guards, studied patrol patterns, and examined the facility. They shared ideas, combining Zyphora's discipline with human ingenuity. Every plan required patience, timing, and trust. Neither could do it alone. The days turned into weeks, and the bond between them grew, though it was built on survival, not friendship in the ordinary sense. One night, under the dim glow of the alien facility, Lyra whispered, "We leave tomorrow." "Are you ready?" Ethan nodded, his jaw tight with determination. "We survive together." They faced numerous close calls. A sudden patrol nearly caught them, a collapsing ceiling blocked their path, and alien predators roamed near the exit. But they persevered. Finally, after a tense journey, they reached the edge of the alien planet where a shuttle waited. Lyra piloted it, using skills she had learned from years of interstellar training. Ethan assisted, monitoring navigation and systems he barely understood but adapted to quickly. The shuttle lifted off, narrowly escaping enemy fire. As they entered space, Lyra looked at Ethan. "I never thought I would return with a human," she admitted. "But I am glad you are here." Ethan smiled faintly. "And I never thought I'd survive Zyphora's enemies. Yet here we are." Memorials were being prepared, and the nation mourned the loss of its princess. Soldiers whispered her name in the camps, children drew her figure in the sand, and the royal palace's banners hung at half-mast. The people believed their greatest warrior was gone forever, but she was coming back, and with her, a human who carried the potential to change everything. Lyra watched Zyphora's blue and green orb grow larger in the shuttle window. Her heart swelled with a mixture of fear, anticipation, and determination. She knew the moment she landed, nothing would be the same. Not for her father, not for the people, and certainly not for herself. She took a deep breath. She had survived impossible odds, learned the value of cooperation beyond her own species, and discovered a new perspective on leadership. Now, it was time to return home. As the shuttle entered Zyphora's atmosphere, Lyra braced for the moment that would define her future. And she was ready. The shuttle cut through Zyphora's upper atmosphere, leaving streaks of fire and light behind. Princess Lyra gripped the controls, her knuckles white, but her mind was clear. Beside her, Ethan Cole monitored the navigation systems, his eyes flicking from screen to screen. Neither spoke. Words were unnecessary. Every nerve was tuned to the moment, every decision critical. When the shuttle finally touched down on Zyphora's central landing platform, alarms began to blare. Guards rushed forward, weapons raised, ready to confront whoever had returned. The princess opened the ramp. She stepped onto the platform first, armor scratched and dusted from the journey, eyes unwavering. Behind her, Ethan followed. His uniform, unlike Zyphora's ornate warrior attire, looked simple and foreign, but his presence was confident. A stunned silence fell. Soldiers froze, mouths open. Many had thought Lyra dead, and no one had expected her to return, much less with a human. Murmurs rippled through the gathered crowd. "It's her," one whispered. "And that's a human." Seeing his daughter alive should have brought relief, yet he felt a storm of emotions he could not easily name. "Lyra," he said, voice breaking slightly, "you how? This human, why is he here?" Some gritted their teeth, arms twitching toward weapons. Others looked on, unsure, conflicted, or simply shocked. One of the generals stepped forward, voice cold and demanding. "Princess, with all respect, this creature is untested. He could be a spy. We do not know what he is capable of. He is no threat. He is an ally. I will answer for him." Her words rang out like a command, and the soldiers, unsure, stepped back. Ethan bowed slightly, unfamiliar with the formalities of Zyphoran etiquette, but his respect was clear. "I mean no harm," he said simply. "I only want to help." And beside her, a human, someone he had never expected to see on Zyphora. He wanted to reject Ethan, to banish him, but part of him, perhaps the part that had always admired Lyra's judgment, told him to listen. "We will speak inside," he said finally, voice tight. Inside the palace, the conversation was tense. The walls were covered in banners of Zyphora's victories, and every corner reminded them of the planet's proud history. Lyra recounted her capture, her observations, and the escape. She explained how humans could offer perspectives Zyphora had never considered, strategies that valued creativity over brute force, empathy over rigid hierarchy, and adaptability over strict discipline. The king listened, silent at first. He wanted to argue, to reject the notion entirely. And yet, as Lyra spoke, he noticed something he could not ignore, the glimmer of change in his daughter's eyes. She had returned stronger, wiser, and unafraid to challenge long-held beliefs. "I understand your perspective," he said finally, his voice low. "But Zyphora has survived because we are strong, disciplined, and united. How can we risk teaching weakness? That is why I survived. If they see your plan as dangerous, I will abide by tradition. Zyphora's future cannot rest on trust alone." The next weeks were filled with tension and training. Lyra introduced Ethan to Zyphora's warriors. At first, many resisted. Some whispered behind his back, calling him fragile or unworthy. Others openly challenged his presence. But Ethan remained calm, responding not with anger but with competence and respect. Slowly, the soldiers began to notice something remarkable. He worked differently, yes, but his results were impressive. Together, Lyra and Ethan developed new training routines. Humans and Zyphorans practiced side by side. The exercises emphasized not just strength, but observation, strategy, and adaptability. Soldiers learned to anticipate enemy movements, improvise under pressure, and think critically about the battlefield. Some struggled at first, but even the most skeptical began to see improvement. Lyra's influence spread beyond the training grounds. Young warriors began to discuss tactics openly, sharing ideas without fear of rank or hierarchy. They started to value creativity as much as power. Even some older generals, though reluctant, admitted that the new methods had potential. Yet not everyone was convinced. Certain factions in the court grew restless. They whispered that Lyra had been changed by humans, that she had strayed from Zyphora's traditions, and that the king's judgment was clouded. Plots began to form in shadowed corners, seeking to discredit her or remove Ethan. Lyra knew she had to act carefully. She could not fight Zyphora's enemies alone. She needed allies within her own ranks. She began meeting with sympathetic soldiers privately, showing them small successes from the new methods. She shared stories of her survival, emphasizing teamwork, courage, and intelligence over sheer strength. Slowly, the network grew. The first real test came when intelligence arrived of a renewed attack by Zyphora's enemies. Reports suggested that traditional defenses would not hold. Lyra and Ethan proposed a daring plan, a coordinated strike that combined Zyphora's raw strength with human tactics, flanking maneuvers, diversion strategies, and adaptive counterattacks. The council was divided. Some generals rejected the idea outright, fearing the untested human strategies. Others hesitated, unsure if the princess could be trusted to guide them. King Talyrix watched silently, weighing risks, pride, and the potential for greatness. Finally, Lyra addressed the council, her voice firm and unwavering. We have survived because of tradition, yes, but tradition alone will not win this battle. If we embrace new methods, we can not only survive, but achieve a victory our enemies cannot anticipate. I ask you to trust me, trust all of us. The council agreed to a limited trial, granting Lyra and Ethan authority over a key division of forces. Preparation began. Lyra trained soldiers in hybrid tactics, combining the disciplined strikes of Zyphora with the unpredictable, clever maneuvers Ethan demonstrated. Communication improved as soldiers from different species learned to work together. Morale rose as the young warriors felt empowered to think, act, and contribute ideas. On the eve of battle, Lyra walked among the troops. She saw determination in their eyes, courage in their stance, and curiosity in their expressions. She felt a quiet pride. This was not the same army she had left weeks ago. It was stronger, smarter, and more united than she could have imagined. Ethan joined her, his hand resting briefly on her shoulder in a gesture of solidarity. "They will fight well," he said softly. "They trust you." Fires of preparation burned brightly in the camps, reflecting off weapons, armor, and determined faces. Lyra looked up, thinking of the battle ahead. She remembered the battlefield where she had almost died, the enemy that had underestimated humans, and the lesson she had learned about strength, courage, and cooperation. As night fell, the princess and the human sat quietly, watching the stars. Tomorrow, they would lead Zyphora into battle not only as a test of might, but as a test of belief. Belief in each other, in new ideas, and in the power of working together. They had survived impossible odds before, and now they would show their people that a united front, of alien and human alike, could achieve greatness beyond anything Zyphora had ever known. The dawn rose over Zyphora's battlefield, casting a pale golden light on thousands of warriors lined in formation. Princess Lyra stood at the front, her armor reflecting the first rays of the sun. Beside her, Ethan Cole adjusted his gear and scanned the terrain. The enemy forces had massed just beyond the ridge, a seemingly endless army of warriors and machines ready to crush Zyphora's defenses. Lyra took a deep breath. She had faced impossible odds before, but today was different. Today she would lead her people not only with strength but with new tactics and trust that her soldiers had never known. She turned to Ethan. "Are you ready?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Ready as I'll ever be, just remember, they don't know us. That's our advantage." Energy blasts lit the sky and the ground trembled under the weight of their machines. Zyphora's warriors held their positions, disciplined and alert. But this time, Lyra was not relying solely on traditional formations. She had spent weeks preparing them for unpredictability, for thinking beyond rigid orders, and for trusting one another. The battle began with a deceptive retreat. Lyra commanded the front lines to fall back slowly, drawing the enemy into a trap. Soldiers hesitated at first, unsure if retreat was wise, but Ethan's calm instructions reminded them that it was a tactic, not fear. The enemy surged forward, convinced they had gained an advantage. Then Lyra's second wave struck. Hidden squads flanked the enemy from both sides, using terrain and timing to create chaos among their ranks. Zyphora's warriors moved fluidly, communicating in ways they had never before. Humans and aliens fought side by side, adapting quickly to enemy movements. The enemy was thrown into confusion. Their rigid formations could not handle the sudden unpredictability. Machines that had seemed unstoppable were disabled through clever sabotage. Soldiers who had relied on brute force found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Lyra watched from her vantage point, her eyes scanning the battlefield. She saw her people fighting not just with strength, but with intelligence and courage. Young soldiers who had been uncertain now acted boldly, making decisions that saved lives and turned the tide. Ethan moved among them, guiding, advising, and lending a human perspective that complemented Zyphora's might. Midway through the battle, the enemy launched a massive aerial assault. Ships swooped down, firing energy weapons that could have devastated the ground troops. Lyra quickly signaled a counter-strategy. Using a combination of Zyphora's superior agility and Ethan's unconventional thinking, they lured the attackers into a canyon where ground-based traps had been prepared. The enemy ships crashed, unable to maneuver, giving Zyphora's forces a crucial advantage. Despite their successes, the battle was not without losses. Brave warriors fell and machines were destroyed. Lyra moved among the troops, rallying them, giving orders and inspiring courage. She felt the weight of responsibility for every life under her command, but she also felt the pride of witnessing her people rise to a level they had never known. Ethan, too, proved himself invaluable. He spotted enemy weaknesses that traditional scouts would have missed. He suggested maneuvers that Zyphoran warriors initially resisted, but each proved effective. Slowly, even the most skeptical generals began to recognize the value of the human perspective. The turning point came when the enemy commander sent a strike team to eliminate Lyra herself. They assumed that if the princess fell, Zyphora's forces would crumble. Lyra anticipated this. She split her forces, sending decoy units to draw the attackers into an ambush while she and Ethan led a small team to confront the strike force directly. The engagement was intense. Lyra moved with deadly precision, her sword flashing and energy blasts cutting through enemy ranks. Ethan used his ingenuity to disable key machines, create diversions, and protect the princess. Together, they were unstoppable, combining skill and strategy in ways the enemy could not predict. After the strike team was defeated, Lyra turned her attention to the remaining forces. The battlefield had shifted. Zyphora's warriors were no longer just defending, they were advancing with purpose. Flanking maneuvers, surprise attacks, and coordinated strikes dismantled enemy formations. Every soldier contributed ideas, every action mattered, and the combined strength and intelligence overwhelmed the opposition. As the sun reached its zenith, the enemy began to retreat. Their machines were destroyed, their morale broken, and their soldiers scattered. Zyphora had won, not by brute force alone, but through strategy, innovation, and unity. Lyra's heart swelled with pride, not just for herself, but for every soldier who had fought and survived. When the battle ended, the field was quiet except for the whispers of victory and the groans of the injured. Lyra and Ethan walked among the soldiers, offering reassurance, praise, and guidance. Young warriors approached them, wide-eyed and grateful. Many had witnessed for the first time that strength alone was not the path to survival, that courage, intelligence, and cooperation were just as important. King Talyrix arrived at the battlefield, his armor scratched and worn from overseeing the fight from a secure position. He looked at the princess and the human standing together, victorious, and felt a mix of emotions, pride, relief, and awe. He had feared that her return with a human might weaken Zyphora, yet here she stood, stronger than ever, leading his people to a triumph they had not thought possible. In the aftermath, Lyra began organizing the wounded, ensuring that humans and aliens alike were treated equally. She emphasized the importance of teamwork, reminding everyone that victory had come not from one person, but from the unity of all. Ethan assisted, using his medical training and battlefield knowledge to help those in need. The soldiers began to see him not as a foreigner, but as an indispensable ally. The Council of Generals convened to review the battle. Some remained skeptical, but most could not deny the success of the new tactics. Lyra and Ethan explained every maneuver, every decision, and how the combination of Zyphoran discipline and human ingenuity had led to victory. Even the most traditional generals had to admit that their methods had been enhanced by this partnership. Lyra's influence began to spread beyond the battlefield. Young warriors asked her to teach them strategy and leadership. She held classes in communication, decision-making, and adaptation. Ethan contributed as well, introducing concepts of human ingenuity, improvisation, and teamwork. Slowly, the culture of Zyphora began to shift, not abandoning tradition, but enhancing it with new perspectives. The story of the battle spread quickly across the planet. Civilians celebrated their soldiers, and news of the princess returning with a human became a tale of inspiration. Parents told their children that courage came in many forms and that alliances, even with unexpected allies, could make them stronger. Lyra continued to reflect on her journey. She had faced death, survived against impossible odds, and returned to lead her people. She had seen the value of cooperation, the strength in diversity, and the power of trust. She realized that Zyphora's future would depend not just on strength, but on wisdom, adaptability, and the ability to learn from others. King Talyrix, once skeptical, now approached the princess privately. "You have returned stronger than I imagined," he said, "and you have taught us something important. Strength is more than power alone. I see that now." "You have made me proud, Lyra." As night fell over the battlefield, fires burned not just from battle but from celebration. Soldiers shared stories, laughter, and hope. Lyra and Ethan looked out at the horizon, knowing that this was only the beginning. Zyphora had survived today, but the lessons they had learned about courage, cooperation, and innovation would shape the planet for generations. Lyra spoke softly, almost to herself. "This is the future we can build, strong, united, and wiser than ever before." Ethan nodded, understanding completely. They had changed not only the outcome of a battle but the very heart of a civilization. The twin suns set, casting a warm glow over Zyphora. The princess, the human, and their soldiers looked to the stars, ready for whatever challenges awaited them next. They knew that together they were capable of anything. The future was theirs to shape, and they would meet it with courage, intelligence, and unity. The battle had ended, but the work of rebuilding had only begun. Zyphora's fields were scarred, cities bore the marks of destruction, and countless soldiers needed care. Princess Lyra walked through the camps, her eyes scanning the injured, the weary, and the hopeful. Beside her, Ethan Cole moved with practiced ease, assisting wherever he could, his calm presence inspiring those around him. The people of Zyphora had begun to see that this victory was unlike any other. It was not merely a triumph of strength, but of intelligence, courage, and cooperation. Soldiers who had doubted the value of human ideas now sought Ethan's advice, eager to learn the strategies that had helped them survive and win. Lyra smiled quietly. Change had begun, and it was stronger than she had imagined. King Talyrix entered the main council hall, a room usually filled with stern faces and heated debates. Now the atmosphere was different. There was respect in the air, tempered by curiosity. The generals and council members waited for the king to speak, their eyes on him, their expressions uncertain. "My people," he began, his voice carrying authority and calm, "we have faced a great challenge. We have survived and we have triumphed, not only through our strength but through wisdom, creativity, and courage. Our victory was guided by Princess Lyra and by a human who has shown us the power of new ideas. I am honored to serve your people," he said. "I only hope to continue helping Zyphora grow stronger and wiser." The soldiers, council members, and civilians who had gathered outside to witness the council meeting felt a shift, a recognition that strength could take many forms, and that wisdom and courage were equally valuable. Lyra spoke next. "We have seen that unity is our greatest weapon. Our strength alone is not enough. Together, humans and Zyphorans can achieve what neither species could alone. We must continue to train, to learn, and to prepare for the future, not just battles, but for a civilization that lasts." They had seen their leaders value intelligence and courage as much as brute force, and they wanted to be part of this new era. In the following weeks, Lyra and Ethan worked tirelessly to establish programs for integration and training. Humans were invited to train alongside Zyphoran warriors, sharing tactics, teamwork strategies, and problem-solving skills. The training grounds were filled with laughter, shouts, and the clash of weapons, not just as exercises, but as lessons in cooperation and understanding. Lyra also focused on leadership education. She taught soldiers to make decisions, to trust their instincts, and to value their allies. Ethan introduced unconventional strategies, encouraging creative thinking and adaptability. Slowly, the culture of Zyphora began to shift. It was no longer enough to be strong. One had to be smart, courageous, and collaborative. King Talyrix watched closely. At first, he had been cautious, fearing that the influence of humans might weaken his people. But as he observed the results, soldiers thinking critically, young leaders emerging, and victories achieved through strategy rather than sheer force, he realized that he had been wrong. Strength and tradition remained, but they were now enhanced by new perspectives. One evening, Lyra and Ethan walked along the cliffs overlooking the capital. The twin suns were setting, casting long shadows over the city. "Do you ever worry," Ethan asked, "that not everyone will accept this change? It will take time, but they will understand. I only help them see it." Hospitals and medical centers were improved, combining Xyphoran technology and human methods to heal the wounded faster. In the military, the changes were even more profound. Soldiers who had once relied solely on strength now trained in strategy, teamwork, and innovation. New units were formed, integrating humans and Xyphorans equally, with leaders chosen for intelligence, courage, and vision. Training simulations incorporated unpredictable scenarios, teaching warriors to think beyond rigid orders. The army was not just strong, it was smart, adaptive, and ready for anything. The people of Zyphora, once skeptical of humans, began to see them as allies, teachers, and partners. Markets saw human and alien merchants working together, exchanging knowledge and goods. Schools incorporated lessons about interspecies cooperation, teaching children that diversity was a strength, not a threat. The culture of the planet shifted quietly but profoundly, moving toward a civilization that valued both tradition and innovation. King Talyrix called a celebration in the capital to honor the victory and the new era of unity. Soldiers marched proudly alongside civilians, humans and Zyphorans alike. Lyra and Ethan stood at the front, acknowledging the crowd. The king addressed the people, his voice strong and clear. "Today, we honor not only our triumph in battle but the courage to embrace new ideas. We honor those who fought, those who led, and those who taught us that strength comes in many forms. Zyphora will grow stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before." In the weeks that followed, Lyra continued her work as both a warrior and a diplomat. She visited distant planets, establishing alliances and sharing the lessons Zyphora had learned. She spoke to young warriors, teaching them that courage, intelligence, and compassion were all marks of true strength. Ethan accompanied her, showing that humans could be trusted partners and allies in interstellar endeavors. Even King Talyrix changed. He still maintained the traditions and discipline that had made Zyphora great, but he encouraged innovation, cooperation, and learning from others. He observed the next generation of Zyphoran warriors with pride, seeing young leaders emerge who combined strength with strategy, courage with wisdom, and loyalty with compassion. Lyra's legacy grew beyond her immediate victories. Stories of her courage, her return, and her partnership with a human spread throughout the galaxy. Zyphora became known not only as a powerful planet, but as a civilization capable of wisdom, adaptation, and collaboration. Other species took note, seeking alliances and learning from their methods. One evening, Lyra stood alone on a hill overlooking the capital. The city glowed with lights and life, a testament to resilience, courage, and change. Ethan joined her, handing her a cup of warm liquid. They watched the twin suns set, thinking of battles fought and lessons learned. "Do you think they will continue to grow?" Ethan asked. Lyra nodded. "Yes, we have shown them what is possible. The future belongs to those who are brave enough to embrace it. We've changed a world." Soldiers trained, children played, and the people celebrated life and victory. The planet, once solely defined by strength, was now a beacon of hope, wisdom, and unity, a civilization that had learned to value every form of courage and intelligence. Lyra knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy held many challenges, but Zyphora was ready. Humans and Zyphorans would stand side by side, learning from one another, growing stronger together. The legacy of this battle, of the human who survived alongside a princess and of the courage to embrace change, would be remembered for generations. The princess turned to Ethan. "We have done well," she said softly. Ethan nodded. "Yes, we have. And the best part is, it's only the start." The stars above twinkled, a reminder that the galaxy was vast, full of possibilities, and waiting for those brave enough to shape it. And Zyphora, guided by courage, wisdom, and unity, was ready to meet whatever came next.